And now, The Last Boy on Earth, Chapter 32, The Last Message. "It's faint, I tell you, but she's definitely there," said Joe sternly, putting his finger to his lips to silence the others. They were all standing around the radio transceiver in the observation deck at the top of the tower of the Penobscot Bridge. Night had fallen nearly an hour ago as the crimson sun painted the sky a feathery maroon with dusk. They had spent many hours readying the bridge as a massive radio transmitter, using the suspension cables as huge antennae, but they were frustrated. They had been broadcasting on low power for 20 minutes with no response from anyone anywhere. All of their hopes and aspirations for the future were wrapped up in this one event. It was paramount that they succeed, for each of them knew their dilemma of isolation. "Tatiana has been broadcasting every night for over a month. Why now? Why would her signal disappear now?" asked Brady. "I'm telling you, she hasn't disappeared. She's there, but the signal is weak. Now all of you be quiet," Joe grunted, while his right hand slowly tuned the knob as red LEDs numbered themselves up and down the dial. The white noise of the universe filled the air with static that each of them held their breaths, waiting. "Our last broadcast," came the voice of Radio Ukraine over the air in a tinny whine, barely audible against the background static. Joe maneuvered the dials and pressed a button that seemed to eliminate most of the static. She continued. "Only one left. Am broadcasting from smaller backup transmitter. Our main transmitter, destroyed by fire. All my engineers died in fire." The gathered eyes of the company were all focused on the one glowing dial on the transmitter. Joe was recording the transmission on a small battery-powered digital recorder for later review, but it was clear already that they would never forget the words they were now hearing. It was too unbearable, like listening to a dying woman's last words. "This is final broadcast. Repeat, this is final broadcast. I am alone now. Just over 120 people spread over the world have contacted me. Only continent I have not been contacted is Antarctica, but is winter there and many may have survived in isolation from people. Europe has approximately 20 survivors. Australia has many. Africa and South America much the same. Asia has another 30 to 40. North America, where virus is believed to have originated, has 25. I have instructed all to broadcast on this frequency. If you are listening, you might still be able to contact these people. Keep trying. Do not stop. Increase your signal strength. Make contact. I am sorry to tell you our problems. We have been bothered many nights now by strange happenings, by things we cannot explain. We hear voices from radio even when radio is off, voices threatening us to stop. Some of those who have contacted us have told similar circumstances all over the world, of things that do not make sense happening around them, like the old world of our grandfathers is waking up from long sleep. Last night, lightning struck transmitter and it began to burn, trapping engineers inside building. I could not help them escape. Today, I am alone and reach out to you one last time before backup generator runs out of fuel. Please relay this message all around the world. We live. We are still alive." The observatory filled with an eerie silence as Tatiana's voice ceased. There was nothing but a palpable silence thick enough to cut with a knife, filling their minds with sorrow and loss. If losing everyone you ever loved wasn't enough to drag a heart through the gutter, the loss of this one voice alone felt like an end to all things, and sounded like the way the world ended, with a whisper followed by the white noise of static. "Damn it," said Joe quietly. No one spoke for a long moment after, letting the silence overwhelm them. Joe said, "Oh, it's a shame. At least we know how many people are out there. And in a larger sense, where they are. She gave us some cities from earlier broadcasts: New York, Washington, D.C. We also know that if they'd heard her before, they'd still be listening to this frequency. Imagine how many other survivors there might be out there who never once thought of tuning her in on a world band radio. I mean, there could be thousands. If we act quickly, we can transmit our own message out to the world while a few of them are still listening. Each of the faces in the group quietly affirmed their agreement with a quick and silent nod. There was no time to waste. What Radio Ukraine had started, they must continue. They had the transmitter, the power, and more than that, the will to contact other survivors. Tatiana's final words haunted them while giving them a purpose: contact others or die trying. It was the only task left on Earth. In a moment, Joe was rehearsing the actions they would all need to take to bring the generator to life. Dr. Grindle would monitor the signal strength while Joe would operate the transmitter. Brady and Kaylee would take the elevator down several stories to the base of the tower and stand by the generator just in case there was any problem. From his work at the library, Brady had become fairly handy with a diesel generator. For his own comfort, Brady took the autobiography of Benjamin Franklin with him. We'll start the auxiliary generator at 8:55 exactly. That, along with the power from the bridge's built-in emergency generator, ought to be enough for a short but very powerful broadcast. It won't be enough, Kaylee said quietly. You keep saying that. Why? Asked Joe. I can't tell you. Not yet. But don't worry, I have a plan, was all she would say. Well, I wish you'd share it with us, said Dr. Grindle. I don't even know how to begin to put it into words, she replied. We go live on air at 9 p.m., everyone to their stations. Joe spoke without making eye contact, his hands a blur over the various switches and buttons on the mountain of equipment piled on the white folding tables they had brought with them. Have you thought about what you're going to say? Asked Dr. Grindle. Joe turned to him for a quick moment and said, No, not really. I guess you ought to say something simple and easy to understand in case anyone who's listening doesn't speak English very well. Well, how about, we are here, we are here, we are here. It worked for those in Horton Hears a Who, said Kaylee, without missing a beat. Nice, said Brady with approval. Joe grunted. Yeah, we got a radio station to run. Everyone to their stations, now. Brady and Kaylee took the elevator down to the deck of the bridge and the generators. Once they were out of earshot of Joe and Dr. Grindle, she spoke. Brady, I need to get to the river and make contact with those on the far shore. I'm not sure how, but I believe they can help boost the power of the One more. This is really hard. One more time. Brady, I need to get down to the river and make contact with those on the far shore. I'm not sure how, but I believe they can help boost the power of the broadcast. Well, I did what you asked. I've rigged the cord long enough to reach the shore down the river below. The other end is already connected to the electrical service box. We'll just need to flip the switch, the circuit breaker, said Brady, as he pointed out the black box on the panel. Now, tell me exactly what it is you hope to do. I'm going down by the shore. I'll take hold of the cord and I'll step into the water when Joe flips the switch. If I'm right, we'll all get a little power boost from them. Yeah, but if you do that, won't you electrocute yourself? Brady exclaimed. Death and I are on very agreeable terms, Brady. What? She took his hand and held it tightly, and for a long moment she gazed quietly into his eyes, and then she smiled. I wouldn't do anything to leave you, ever. Not after what we've been through. But you have to trust me, got it? Brady smiled and nodded his head. Such power, such purpose. Got it, he replied. As Kaylee started to walk away so she could position herself at the base of the bridge at the river's edge, Brady said, Hey. Yes? Be careful. I will. He tried to brush it off, knowing that the entire future of the human race depended on the broadcast, and hopefully the eventual contact from other survivors. Joe's idea was to continue Radio Ukraine's work and to broadcast nightly as long as possible. Radio would bring the world back together and link the far-flung groups of survivors into one collective human group, a civilization. for lack of a better term, connected by the waves of the electromagnetic spectrum. And this night's broadcast would be historic, and Brady didn't want to be the one asleep at the wheel when 9 o'clock came around. All there was to do now was wait for the ionosphere to lower, and then make the call that would change the world. "Brady, time check," Kaylee's voice sang out from the Motorola walkie-talkie clipped to his belt. "I've 8:54, he replied. "Check. 1 minute to auxiliary generator startup," she said. "Check. 1 minute and counting." "Don't worry. I'm on it," he said. He was alone in the huge room at the bottom of the tower with a single light shining in the center. He had a 12 LED headlight on his forehead, and he was fully loaded with tool belts. He didn't carry any weapons, even though he suspected his need for them was not quite over with. He knew the kind of battle he was going to fight tonight would only need one weapon, an intangible one called courage. "Ben, I'm nervous," he said to the autobiography of Benjamin Franklin resting in his back pocket. "Yes, you should be. A lot depends upon you," answered the good man. "Well, thanks for the encouragement," replied Brady. "You don't need encouragement, Brady. Well, you're the bravest young man I've ever had the good fortune to meet. I have no doubt that whatever happens, you will act with the good sense you've always shown, and things will unfold as they should." Brady wished that Ben was more than a voice proceeding from a book, because at that moment, at the base of the lit tower of the Penobscot Narrows Bridge, looking up at the moon, he felt very alone. Joe's voice broke their silence, and Brady put his hand on the switch, ready to start it. "Throw the switch," came the order. Brady moved the switch on the circuit breaker, and the generator they had hauled from the construction company's lot roared into life, a deep, guttural, throaty sound suddenly awakened into action. "How's that?" Brady radioed to Joe. "We're pushing 50,000 watts, said Joe calmly. Brady smiled and waited, and then at the appointed moment, the broadcast began. Then Joe's voice said to the quiet earth, "This is Civilization Radio broadcasting from Bucksport, Maine at 50,000 watts to the entire planet. If anyone can hear..." And from out of nowhere, a bolt of lightning struck the tower, its white arc of frenzied light dancing upon the cables and down to the deck of the bridge, where Brady stood next to the auxiliary generator. At that same moment, the tower went dark, and the signal failed, leaving all of them in the dark. Then another sound of thunder cracked above them, and Brady felt Bjorn's powerful message reverberate throughout his frame. But Brady knew that he was going to say this before he understood the bear's message. He could feel the presence behind him. "Grendel," the bear said. Brady slowly turned to look at the spot behind him where the second lightning bolt had struck. Fenris Grendel stood there, different from before, and because he had occupied the body of a dog rather than that of a human, he looked more like a werewolf from the movies than anything else that Brady could imagine. His snout was massive and full of teeth, a snarl bending his lips. Hair covered his 8-foot-tall body, and he walked on the strange and awkward hind legs of a dog. Yet his arms were fully human and muscular, ending in the disastrous claws of a feral creature, still retaining the human hand shape. Brady could smell his fetid odor and nearly swooned from its effect. He understood Grendel's ability to summon the forces of the storm and knew that it had been his doing to call the lightning down upon their enterprise and stop them from making contact. "I knew you'd come back," Brady said. "From the ends of the earth and the first syllable of time, I would find my way here to end your days. Humanity has spent itself and is finished," spat out the monster as he advanced slowly toward Brady, who seemed to grow smaller each second. From the last place he expected to draw upon, Brady began to laugh. At first it was no more than a smirk on his face, but soon a giggle turned into a guffawing, belly-shaking, air-gasping laugh, one that could melt all the walls of the world and send dictators and politicians down to their final doom. With every passing second of laughter, Fenris Grendel grew more irate beyond even the small amount of reason he possessed. Brady calmed himself, holding a hand to his belly, putting one hand up in the air to hold the monster back while he regrained? No. One more time. With every passing second of laughter, Fenris Grendel grew more irate beyond even the small amount of reason he possessed. Brady calmed himself, holding a hand to his belly while putting one hand up in the air to hold the monster back while he regained control and his breath. "I'm not afraid of you. Don't you see? I'm your match, Grendel, old bud. I know you better than anyone. Ben Franklin told me all about it. I'm positive, you're negative. If we fight, we'll only cancel each other out. Don't you get it? If I die, so do you. We're matter and antimatter. We're a perfect match." Grendel paused for a moment to ponder the words from this enigmatic boy who stood in front of him as though he was some sort of ancient, unstoppable warrior returning from a nether region to face his eternal opponent again in their endless cycle. Fenris Grendel knew fear and hated himself for it, and somewhere deep inside he cowered in a corner. Brady knew what was about to happen and surrendered himself to it. He felt at peace with the solution he had chosen. Kaylee needed the time to complete her job. She knew that Joe needed her power to augment the generators, even if he didn't suspect a thing. If Brady did this, what little of humanity that remained could regroup, and this hateful enemy would be destroyed. He thought of Dr. Grindle and his words. He doesn't think, he feels. He knew what he had to do. He reached into his shirt and grasped his grandfather's medal, the one he'd carried for so long. Like Frodo grasping the One Ring, he felt its power surging. It gave him strength. "I'm ready," Brady said, standing tall and proud. "In the words of your girlfriend in the hospital when she cut my fingers," Fenris Grendel snarled, "this ends here." "Well, if that's the way it has to be, bring it on," said Brady. "And by the way, she's not my girlfriend." End of chapter.